first thing I saw that morning wasn't the sunrise. It was the bright orange paper stapled to my fence, flapping in the wind. Like a warning flag. Notice of community violation, it read. Failure to comply may result in forfeiture of property. Forfeiture of property, my land. I stood there barefoot in the dirt, coffee cooling in my hand, wondering how the Homeowners Association could threaten to take what my father had, built 40 years ago. I'd lived in that little farmhouse my entire life. The land wasn't fancy, just 5 acres of oak trees, a red barn and a pond that caught the sunset every evening. My dad used to say, as long as this land is ours, we'll never be poor. So when I saw that notice, something inside me cracked. I marched down the gravel road to the HOA office, the paper still in my hand. The office looked like a bank. Marble floors, glass walls, the faint smell of money and control. Behind the counter sat Karen Lambert, the HOA president, dressed like she was about to sell $1 million house. Morning, Mr. Dawson, she said with a tight smile. I assume you're here about the violation. You bet I am, I said, slapping the paper on her desk. You can explain to me how you think you own my land. She tilted her head. It's not about ownership, sir. It's about compliance. Your fence doesn't meet HOA code. And your barn, well, it's painted red, not the approved shade of terracotta dusk. I actually laughed. You're trying to seize my land because my barn's the wrong color? It's in the covenants, she said, tapping a thick binder. You agreed to them when you purchased your property. I didn't purchase anything, I snapped. I inherited it from my father. This land existed before your HOA ever did. Her smile tightened. Then perhaps you should have joined the association when you had the chance. You're on community property now, Mr. Dawson. We have rights. Something about the way she said we have rights made my blood boil. I knew they'd been after my land for years, wanted to tear down my barn and build condos, expand the community. I'd refused every offer, every letter, every knock on the door. Now they were trying to force me out. I'm not giving up this land, I said quietly. You can paint your condos whatever color you want, but this soil stays mine. Karen leaned forward, her perfume sharp in the air. Then I guess we'll see you in court. As I walked out, I heard her whisper to her assistant. File the seizure motion today. The words echoed in my head the whole way home. That night, I stood by the pond, watching the moon reflect on the water. My father's voice came back to me, calm and certain. They can buy paper, son, but they can't buy the truth. I swore right then I'd fight them with everything I had, even if it meant losing everything else. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing under the cold fluorescent lights of County Courtroom 3B, the same courthouse where my father once fought for water rights during the drought of '94. The irony wasn't lost on me back then. He fought to save the land. Now I was fighting to keep it. The HOA had sent a whole army, attorneys in tailored suits. Karen Lambert front and center, holding her binder like a weapon. I had no lawyer, no fancy paperwork. Just a stack of old deeds, my father's letters, and a conviction that truth still meant something in this world. The judge, a tired-looking man with gray hair and sharp eyes, called the room to order. Case 475B, Dawson versus Oak Creek Homeowners Association. Karen's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, he began. Mr. Dawson's property falls within the jurisdiction of Oak Creek HOA, as his land is bordered on 3 sides by HOA-managed property. He's refused to comply with community standards, repeatedly ignored notices and— Hold it, I interrupted. The judge shot me a warning glance, but I couldn't stop. With all due respect, sir, that's not true. My property has been in the Dawson family since 1981, long before this HOA ever existed. I never signed up, never agreed to any of their so-called standards. Karen crossed her arms, smirking like she already had the verdict in her pocket. Her lawyer adjusted his glasses. Mr. Dawson benefits from community resources, paved roads, streetlights, mail services. I slammed my hand on the table. I paved my own driveway. I maintain my own lights. And as for mail, I walk half a mile to get it because your community removed my box last year. The courtroom went quiet. Even the judge looked up. Mr. Dawson, he said slowly, do you have documentation of your ownership? I nodded and handed over the worn manila folder my father had kept in the safe. Inside were deeds from the county, tax receipts, and one old photograph. My dad standing in front of the barn, holding a hammer, the land stretching out behind him. The judge studied the papers, then looked at Karen. "Mrs. Lambert, do you have proof that the HOA's jurisdiction includes this parcel?" She hesitated. It's adjacent, Your Honor, but our bylaws—" "Your bylaws," the judge interrupted, "cannot override recorded property deeds." I saw her face change, that flash of panic hidden behind a practiced smile. Her lawyer tried to recover. "But, Your Honor, we've issued multiple notices." "And he's ignored them. Because they don't apply to him," the judge said firmly. "You can't seize what you don't own." The room buzzed. Karen's pen slipped from her hand. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Dawson, I'm granting an injunction against the HOA. They are to cease all seizure efforts immediately. Furthermore, given the harassment, I'm issuing a formal warning. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the gavel hit the block. The drive home felt different that day. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. The gravel crunched under the tires, and the trees swayed like they'd been waiting to exhale too. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw it. The same orange notice, still stapled to the fence. I ripped it off, tore it in half, and let the pieces drift into the dirt. The wind carried them away, just like the fear that had been living inside me. Neighbors began stopping by that week. Some came to apologize. Others came to celebrate. Old Mr. Harlan from down the road brought me a pie and said, "Heard you gave the HOA a whooping they won't forget." I laughed, but the truth was I wasn't proud. I was relieved. I never wanted a fight. I just wanted peace. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, looking out at the barn my father built. The red paint was faded. The boards creaked when the wind hit just right. But it stood strong, same as it always had. I thought about him then. About all those mornings he'd be up before sunrise, hammering nails, fixing fences, reminding me that land wasn't just dirt. It was memory, sweat, legacy. The court papers sat on the table beside me. I could have framed them, could have hung them up like a trophy. Instead, I tucked them away inside my dad's old toolbox, right next to his hammer. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. This time, it wasn't from the HOA. It was from a young man named Eli, who lived 3 houses down. "Mr. Dawson," he wrote, "I watched your hearing online. My folks were thinking of selling their place because of the HOA pressure. But seeing you stand up for your rights, it gave us hope. Thank you for reminding us that this land is worth fighting for." I sat there reading those words over and over. That's when I realized the fight was never just about me. It was about everyone who'd ever been pushed around, bullied, or made to feel small because they didn't fit someone else's idea of community. A few days later, I repainted the barn. Not the terracotta dusk they wanted, but a deep, proud red. The same color it had always been. The same color my dad loved. When I finished, I stood back and smiled. The paint glowed under the sunset like fire. Not angry fire, but the kind that warms you after a long storm. I turned to the camera on my porch, hit record, and said the only words that felt right. Don't ever let anyone tell you what your home should look like, or how your life should fit their rules. If something's worth keeping, you fight for it, not with hate, but with truth. I paused, then added softly, and if they ever try to take what's yours, just remember, the land always remembers who it belongs to. I posted the video that night. By morning, it had over 1 million views, but numbers didn't matter. What mattered was this. The land was still mine. The legacy was still alive. And my father, he would have been proud.